right, guys, welcome back to Hockey Doc Talk. Here is our second episode with the new format. And today I'm super excited to present Coach Sean Basil from the U.S. World Juniors Team Championship gold medal, right, Coach?
Yes, sir.
Right? Man, I'm going to tell you a little story, guys, real quick. I was changing the channels, watching TV, and here we go. I see the USA-Canada game, the gold medal round. And when USA won, who's standing there with players holding gold medals up? It was Coach right here. And it's kind of coincidental that I know Coach personally as well. So what we did is we bring him on the show today to talk a little bit about how to develop players, what he had to go to that level to get to where he's at, so that players out there who can't make it in the pros, can't make it in the collegiate level, who maybe want to become a ref, maybe want to become a coach at a certain level. You know, everything starts with mentoring, everything starts with following somebody's actions and trying to achieve that and then overachieve, right? So just real quick, I want to give you a little bit of his bio here. He's a retired U.S. Marine Lieutenant Colonel for 20 years. And again, thank you for serving our country, right?
I appreciate that.
Oh, God, it's.
Thank you.
And we were talking off camera. When he retired, he was like, now what do I do? I got to get a real job now, right? And that's kind of the way I feel sometimes too. Like, what do I do now? And when I treat players and see other people, I always want something more, so, something different to be more challenging. But again, I'm going to repeat this, the USA Performance Coach for the 2016 World Cup. Now, just tell me a little bit about the Performance Coach. What does that entail?
So when you look at an athlete's performance, it obviously deviates day to day. There's a lack of consistency in an athlete's performance.
Right.
At the pro level and at the senior amateur level, if you will, you want to maintain consistency in an athlete, and it really starts with the mindset.
Okay.
So we do a lot of exercises in terms of mindset, a lot of rehearsals, a lot of visualization, and how do we frame the brain so that we actually can prepare ourselves to compete as we will on the ice. A lot of it's a mental game.
That's funny you say that, because as we shared a little bit, when I started out my practice here, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I was doing. I knew how to take care of a patient, but I didn't know anything about business, anything about marketing, anything about anything. And over the years, my business coaches that I've hired have always said, mindset, prepare, focus, visualize. And for some players that are out there and some parents that are out there, we tend to, oh, this is new age, this is hokey, this is pokey. But it's phenomenal how true it is. I do it. And I've had elite level athletes here. One of them is a female soccer player who's on the women's U23 national team. And I asked her, I said, what do you do before a game? And just what you said, she visualizes that the ball comes to the right, comes to the left, goes in front of her, behind her, what she's going to do with the other team's elite player when she's being approached by it. So that's great that they have that now for these guys at a higher level. What is your recommendation for these junior players, these high school players, or even the small little midget and bantam players? How would you start them off, especially if in the beginning they don't know how to do it?
Sure. I've always been a big proponent of the fact that the game is won or lost before you even play. My recommendation to youth hockey athletes, or any athlete in general, is the night prior to a game, if you're lying in bed, you should be visualizing your motions. What does it look like on a breakout? What does it look like in a neutral zone? What does your zone entry look like? What does it look like? What actions are you taking on a power play? What actions are you taking on a penalty kill? You have to understand your role, your position. Wayne Gretzky said it best, be where the puck is going to be. That's visualization. You have to have a mindset where you're training your brain, and ultimately it's a free practice.
Exactly.
You don't have to be on the ice to practice.
Exactly.
Some of the best athletes that I've worked with at the pro level visualize constantly. They have, we call it a pre-game routine, but these guys are doing it the night prior. You look at IndyCar drivers. IndyCar drivers visualize. They're visualizing every single turn, every single timing check. they're doing things that pro athletes do. Completely different sport, but at the end of the day, it's a practice in your brain so that you're prepared for execution when it comes.
Now, how did you learn this? Was it something that was used in the military, or when you were younger and coming up in the hockey levels?
No, I never learned it in hockey. I learned it in the military.
Okay.
I was a reconnaissance officer for many years, and we would visualize the pre-mission profiles that we had to execute.
Oh, really?
So we would be put in isolation for several hours and have to visualize each route we're going to take, each step we're going to move, each move we're going to make. And it's a team environment, so you're doing it together. And what you're ultimately focusing on is your ability to operate at the individual level based on your skill set,
right,
and to visualize your teammates' actions as well.
Okay. And this is why I love hockey in DC, because we get to meet these type of people. You know, in my practice, I get to meet people from all walks of life, and it's so interesting, and what their job entails, and what they have to do to perform it, right? But I want to finish this bio because I got really excited there. But this is amazing. Performance advisor for the NHL, the Red Wings, right? So you've got a contract with the Red Wings, and you're there. And off camera, we were talking, and he was showing me pictures of him, on the bench with all these NHL coaches, and he was there coaching. And share a little bit about your experience when you sat there, and as you were saying, and you saw all these pro players sitting on the bench.
Yeah, during the 2016 World Cup.
Yep.
I had a wonderful opportunity to be on the bench with Coach Tortorella from the Columbus Blue Jackets, Mike Sullivan, back-to-back Stanley Cup winner, John Hines, the head coach of the New Jersey Devils,
right,
Phil Housley, who's an assistant down in Nashville. Great men, great coaches, and great mentors. And what I realized, being in my home rink at the Verizon Center,
right,
this was, I think, September 12th of last year, where we played Finland. And I think it was the only game the U.S. won, unfortunately. What I realized is that there are all of these pro athletes sitting in front of me. I'm in my home rink of the Verizon Center, so to speak, and there's 18,000 people, and I have the opportunity to tell Patrick Kane to back check.
Right. There you go.
And that was a first. That was a first.
I think that's what a lot of the coaches complain about, right?
So I had visualized this. Actually, I had taken about an hour and a half nap pre-game as a coach.
Right.
To prepare my mind mentally for situations that we would face and any questions that came up with the staff that I might be able to advise on. Yeah. And one of the things that I learned is, as an assistant, you're quiet, right, until you're asked to talk. Right. But I was nervous. I was truly nervous, and I had a great opportunity to see the speed of the NHL and the decision-making processes that coaches go through at that tempo, which is phenomenal.
Wow, amazing. So tell me, at the USA hockey level, what are you seeing is the most effective method for players at that level in the area of nutrition, sports performance, and even the rehab?
Sure. Three really separate questions there. Sports performance, nutrition, and rehab. The key differentiator for an amateur and a pro is ultimately how they prepare their mind and body. Okay. These athletes are serious about their business. Their nutrition is completely dialed in. There's no cheat day. Right. If they're really serious about their game. For many of these pro athletes, this is their livelihood. This is how they put food on the table for a family. Exactly. It's not a 14-year-old kid saying, I want to be in the NHL. Well, if you want to be in the NHL, you probably shouldn't be eating Burger King before your game. So the nutrition factors are truly dialed in. And it's really a lot of individual discipline. They are focused purely on what they put in their mouth because they realize that what they put in their body equates to performance. Exactly. From a rehab standpoint, we treat every single. There's a difference. There's a difference between being hurt and being injured. That's right. If you're hurt, play through it. Right. If it's painful, I'm sorry, play through it. Right. It's a tough game. If you're injured, you have to rehab it. The hardest thing to advise a young athlete is to rest, ice, compressed, etc. The old RICE acronym. So what we're finding is that if we're able to explain to these athletes, your job now is to recover, not to be in practice.
Right.
We want you to take X amount of days off and recover and be fully ready to come back. That's really hard for some of these athletes who are highly competitive. We don't want to risk another injury, but for those who are very serious about their job, they take rehab very serious.
Right. That's the important thing. I mean, one of the things I've noticed with the athletes here at the lower level is they don't take the rehab seriously.
Yeah.
Every year I meet with the players and I always say, please, 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 see somebody if you're hurt, see me if you're hurt, do something about it. Don't wait 30 minutes before game time to come over and and try to fix a dislocated shoulder.
It's a great point. There's when you look at the difference between amateurs and pros, the pros take care of preventative maintenance.
Right.
So they're trying to get ahead of an injury by staying healthy, by staying in shape, the amount of off-ice workouts that they do, again, the nutrition factors, any nagging injuries that they're trying to recover through. They are so self-disciplined about it that they're actually getting ahead of any future injuries by taking care of their brain and their body.
Right, and that was a good point that you said, because even here, the patients who excel in whatever they do are being preventative.
That's right.
Are attacking it before it gets worse.
Yeah.
Because once it gets worse, there's no going back, right? Yeah. And for some people, like you said, it's a matter of putting food on the table.
It is.
Right? Especially for the elite level athletes. So
at the NHL level, it's a profession. It's a job for these men, and they get a paycheck based on performance. So they want to perform.
Exactly. Now, concussion's been such a buzz in the media.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of things on concussion here, but one of the things I need to ask is, so what's the buzz over there? What's the buzz on the concussions with USA Hockey?
It's a very serious issue. They have taken significant steps for many years in terms of educating coaches through the coaching education program.
Right, I saw that.
We operate here in the Southeast District. I think we have, at last check, maybe 57,000 athletes and coaches throughout the Southeast District. And as one of the coaches who coaches that program, we spend a lot of time understanding the signs and symptoms of concussions. We want to immediately get an athlete off ice.
Right.
Get him, again, at the youth level, there's not a team physician. So it's really up to a head coach to make a wise judgment call.
Exactly.
To get that athlete off the ice if there's any doubt at all.
Exactly.
So that's what we're training these coaches to do. There's also a lot of great online capabilities that USA Hockey has on their webpage, and they also have an app for some of the injury prevention, concussion protocols, etc. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's really, there's a lot of great tools that amateur coaches can use to understand potential concussions and what to do afterward.
Now, there's always that level of competition, because we've talked about that. The athlete wants to compete, and the athlete actually sometimes can hide the fact that there's an issue.
Sure.
Whether it's the knee, the head, whatever the case is. How would you go about training the parents or the community out there to be a little bit more proactive with things like that?
When I was a youth coach, I would have a quarterly meeting, if you will, with the parents of my team. And again, this was just how I did it, and it's simply a recommendation. It doesn't mean that it's foolproof at all.
Right.
But I would refer to the parents as the stakeholders. And they have entrusted me as a head coach for the welfare and development of their athlete.
Right.
So number one, make sure that their player is safe, and number two, make sure that he or she develops as a hockey player. The discussions we would have about injuries, or such as concussions or trauma, I'm the first one there. I'm really the first line of defense as a head coach.
Exactly.
So as a head coach, we have to ensure that our staff on the bench is appropriately trained, which USA Hockey is doing a great job through the coaching education program, but also make sure that the athletes know that I'm the guy who's going to see this first.
Right.
So there's a significant level of trust between a parent and a coach.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you're dealing with your child.
Exactly.
But the more communication you have and open dialogue, it's important. A lot of coaches at the youth level see the parent as the enemy.
Right.
And it's very unfortunate, because number one, they're paying for it, and number two, it's their child that they've entrusted you with.
Right.
So as a coach, you have a huge responsibility.
Right. So Coach, from a coaching standpoint, what do you look for when you're evaluating players and maybe potential roster spots? Because I know you're going to be, the draft's coming up.
Sure.
And you're going to be at the Red Wings table.
Yeah.
So what do you guys look for? And maybe not even at that level, but even at the USA hockey level, and when you were coaching in the lower levels, what were you looking for?
Let me, a great question, Doc, and I appreciate that question. Let me break it up into two things. I'll break it up into pros,
Okay.
and I'll break it up into amateurs.
Okay.
And when I refer to amateurs, I'm talking about a college athlete and below.
Right.
For a youth hockey player who is trying to make a high school team, a junior team, a college team, whether it's Division I or Division III, what we're looking for are, from a skill standpoint, are really what we call the 5 H's.
Right.
Head, is he a smart hockey player?
Okay.
Or she? Okay, and I refer to that as gender agnostic. Hands, can he or she handle the puck? Can they shoot the puck? Heels, can they skate? Humbleness, so we'll talk about the character part, right? Are they a humble athlete who works hard? And then heart.
Right.
How big is their desire to compete? And when we talk about character and compete, those are really big intangibles. So let me transition now to the pro world. So they've already been evaluated on the 5 H's.
Okay.
The actual tangible skills. We've been able to see these guys, the pro scouting staff, the amateur scouting staff has evaluated these athletes probably from the time they were 15 years old. And now we're going into a 17-year-old draft year. So they've had 2 years of observation, probably 200 or so games that these scouts have seen them. So they know the tangibles. And then we bring them in and we find out who they are, the character of the person. Are you a humble athlete? Are you willing to work hard? Are you an ethical person? Do you have integrity? Are you going to be a good teammate or a great teammate? There's a difference in the locker room.
There is.
And in winning teams, it's all about the locker room. It starts in the room. So you got to have the right individuals. And then the compete level. Is this person, is this athlete willing to go into what we call the dirty areas to get a puck? Are you going to go into the corner to get a puck against a 6'2", 220-pound guy?
Right.
That's the athlete we want. So those, although you can't really assess that, you can't put a metric to those factors or those traits like character and compete, but we do evaluate it to the best that we can.
Wow. And that's how you build a culture.
That's right.
With the characters, but
it's all about the culture, as we talked about.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me something. Do you know that nearly all professional athletes have used chiropractic in some shape or form? Because that's kind of what we do here in the office. And as we're looking at and I always compare it to the NFL, but the NFL, man, they've got a chiropractor, not just on the team, but they got a chiropractor in the stadium. They've got a dentist. They got this. They got that. They've got 24, 27 staff medical staff sitting right there. And as I looked at the NHLs, and I'm just going NHL, but I know USA Hockey is a little different, but they're almost there. There's 2 athletic trainers. I got a dentist. I got an orthopedic surgeon. And then everything is kind of variable depending on the team.
Absolutely.
And what the team.
I didn't know that to be a fact, but it does not surprise me. Again, like we were discussing off camera earlier, when we were in Toronto for the preliminary rounds of World Juniors, I actually tweaked my back in practice that morning and went to see the Toronto Maple Leafs chiropractor.
Nice.
So he was very nice, and he put me on the bed and cracked me up, and he said, "My goodness, you're tight." He said, "You haven't prevented anything, have you?" I said, "I sure didn't." So I was guilty of my own rule. But it goes back to what we talked about earlier in terms of preventative medicine. You want to make sure that your body is well lubricated. So no, it doesn't surprise me at all. I have seen and used many of these chiropractors. I am a big proponent of it. Had I not been a Marine, I think I would have been a chiropractor, but I don't know if I was smart enough. But from an athlete standpoint, it's critical. Because if you're not aligned properly, your step can be off, your stride can be off, your explosiveness can be off. Just a half inch, a quarter inch, and a foot. That's important.
Talk a little bit about that, because a lot of the athletes that I work with, and they're a little younger, and obviously they tend to look up to the pro players, right?
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about mechanics.
Yeah.
So do you, at your level, at the USA level,
Yeah.
do you notice their mechanics are off a little bit, or at that point have they been corrected, or are they still doing their performance exercises to keep it corrected? What do you see?
At the development team in Michigan, we're watching mechanics. We have a skating instructor who she's watching for those specific things. As coaches, we're taking note of that in practice. We can very specifically see a mechanical failure, if you will, in terms of stride length or acceleration or speed, just based on how they're placing their feet. If we see that, it may be an appropriate issue to bring up with the team doctor.
Right.
To look at it from, again, a holistic approach where a coach is saying, hey, I see this, talking to the team doctor to say, is there anything physiologically wrong?
Right.
Perhaps his back is out of alignment, or one leg is shorter than the other by half an inch.
Okay.
That's
right.
These things happen.
Right.
They affect mechanics, they affect performance, and when we talk at a pro level of a player's ability to skate, our game is nothing but skating. You got to be able to skate.
Exactly.
And if your mechanics are off in the slightest, it'll directly affect the stride.
Exactly. And this, working with some of these, NCAA players that I've worked with, you have to be those players are very. It's like driving a Ferrari, right? It's very tuned up. They know. You have to be, from a doctor's perspective, to be honest, you have to be trained in sports medicine a little bit to figure that out.
Absolutely.
Because you know what? If you're not, you're going to take this elite level athlete and completely mess them up, right? Completely bring them down. Maybe their performance is lower, maybe their output's lower, or get injured. Right?
I love your analogy to the Ferrari, because when we talk about any athlete, we want them to treat their bodies like that.
Exactly.
You can be all shined up and polished and not have a motor. You're not going to go anywhere.
That's it.
If you don't have wheels, you're not going to go anywhere. So the preventative maintenance, that is a huge aspect to ensuring that the Ferrari does go at top speed.
Exactly.
And I think it's important. And again, if athletes are really serious about getting to the next level, whatever the next level may be for them, they've got to take care of their body and mind.
Right. So what other areas of interest when it comes to specializing in coaching hockey players do you have? I mean, what's do you have any other interests? I know we've talked about the head game, but what other things kind of make you tick? Yeah,
that's a wonderful question. That's a great question. A tough one, in fact. When you look at the definition of coach, you can go back to antiquity, 1820s, stagecoach.
Right.
And the stagecoach was designed to get a person safely from A to B. That's what we do. We get athletes safely from A to B. And that's a development thing. I really, really enjoy seeing an athlete, male, female, pro, amateur, develop and come back to me and say, Coach, I never knew I had that in me. Or I did not know that I can do that. That to me is powerful, it's rewarding, and to see the opportunity for these young men and women to become good, productive members of society after their sport career is done, that to me is very rewarding.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great. That's great. Well, Coach, thank you for coming, buddy. I appreciate it, and
thank you for having me.
Oh man, anytime. We're definitely going to bring you back, see what happens, see who you guys pick.
I'm excited. Thank you.
But guys, if you're listening to the podcast, and if you need help finding a chiropractor, if you need help with an injury, and because we're listening to you all over the world, don't hesitate to email us at doctors@sjinstitute.com. You can always call us at 703-994-4874. Look us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're at Spine Joint Institute. Even I've got Dr. Felix Yeskin at Hockey Doc is out there as well. And Coach, if a parent wants to contact you about their athlete, their child, or if one of the players out there wants to contact you about maybe mentoring and development, the headspace, or in any case, Where can they contact you?
They could contact me via email at Sean, SEAN _ Braziel, BRAZIEL at yahoo.com. I'm happy to entertain anything at all.
Excellent. You heard it, people. Contact Coach Braziel. An amazing person, and I love that headspace game, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that with a lot of my players, buddy. I appreciate it. Nice to see you too.
Good to
Take
see you
care.
guys. Thank you.